Welcome to another episode of Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. I am Sean Farrell. God is great all the time. All the time, God is great. Let's not waste no more time. Let's get right to it. So, I want to get into a couple of topics today. The first one, I want to discuss the late Paul Westphal, NBA Hall of Famer. NBA Hall of Famer, player, coach, played for Phoenix, Boston, the Knicks, Sonics. Believe he had a 14-year career. Went on to be an assistant with the Suns. Eventually succeeded Cotton Fitzsimmons in the 1992-93 season. And so, he recently passed away a few years ago. Paul Westphal did. But he is in the Hall of Fame now. And so he was involved in probably two of the most famous NBA Finals games. That was Game 5 of the 1976 NBA Finals and Game 3 of the 1993 NBA Finals. And I'm going to get to 1993 in a minute, but let's throw it back to 1976, where the Suns were actually one of the worst teams in the league during the first half of the 1975-76 season. They were actually 18-27 at the All-Star break. Okay. Then they made a trade for Garfield Hurd from the Buffalo Braves. Then once they acquired Hurd from the Buffalo Braves, now the Los Angeles Clippers, that's when everything clicked. And so they went from being 18-27 at the All-Star break to finishing 42-40. Okay. At the end of the 1976 season. Okay. And just as a little side note, Pat Riley was actually on that 76 Suns team that went to the NBA Finals against the Celtics. Okay. So, they finished 42-40. Okay. And they're coached by John McLeod, who coached the Suns for a long time. Coached the Suns, the Mavericks. Was the interim coach for the New York Knicks after Stu Jackson got fired early in the 1990-91 season. So they were coached by John McLeod. And they got blown out in games 1 and 2 in the Boston Garden. No, that was no surprise. Alvin Adams was Rookie of the Year. For the Phoenix Suns, Rookie of the Year. So Phoenix got blown out the first 2 games. And then there was a fight that took place in Game 3 between a guy named Kevin Stacom on the Boston Celtics. It was a guy by the name of Kevin Stacom of the Boston Celtics. He got into a fight with Ricky Sobers of the Phoenix Suns. And that turned the tide of Game 3. And Phoenix won that one. Phoenix won a nail biter again in Game 4. And now they go back to Boston for Game 5. And I just recently watched a documentary special on the greatest game ever played. The triple overtime game, Celtics and Suns. And so the Celtics shot out to a 20-point lead. in Game 5. But the Suns kept chipping away and chipping away. And Paul Westphal brought them back. It was Paul Westphal, Garherd, Dick Van Arsdale, who was a part of that that brought them back. And of course you had Alvin Adams and Ricky Sobers as well. But the thing that makes this game so memorable is the timeout that was called, or the timeout that was called and was a technical foul, and the timeout that was called but wasn't called. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Okay? So I believe Phoenix, so Phoenix had the ball to win the game at the end of the fourth quarter. Okay, they had the ball to win the game, and they were inbounding the ball, and the Celtics had no timeouts left. Okay, Celtics had no timeouts left, so they inbound the ball. One of the Celtics knock it away. Overtime. Okay, so Paul Silas signals timeout. Okay, Paul Silas is signaling timeout for the Boston Celtics. Okay, and so one of the broadcasters for CBS, it was Brent Musburger, Rick Barry, and another guy. I can't remember his name, but he noticed that Paul Silas called timeout, and Richie Powers saw that Paul Silas called timeout. The referee, Richie Powers, he saw Paul Silas call timeout, but Richie Powers didn't call the technical foul. So they asked Dick Van Arsdale about that. He said should have been a technical foul on Richie Powers, and he refused to call it. His statement was he didn't want to see the game end on a call like that. And then Rick Barry, who was calling the game for CBS, recalls it's the official's request to grant the timeout. Okay, Paul Silas calls timeout, and it's the official who has to grant the request, despite the fact Celtics didn't have no timeouts left. And Rick Barry said that the Phoenix Suns got screwed, which they did. Okay, because if Richie Powers called that technical foul and Phoenix hits the technical free throw, Phoenix, who knows? Who knows? They could have been 76 NBA champions. Who knows what would happen, but we'll never know. But, yeah, the technical foul that wasn't called. Now, the technical foul that was called, Paul Westphal signaled timeout at the end of the second overtime, and Phoenix had no timeouts left. Okay. Paul Westphal calls for a timeout. They get it to technical. Jojo White makes it to technical. But now Phoenix can advance the ball to half court. And of course, we all know what happens. Curtis Perry inbounds the ball to Garherd. He gets it, catches it, shoots it, third overtime. So, and real quickly, at the end of the second overtime, okay, John Havlicek hit what seemed was the game winner. Okay. John Havlicek hit what seemed like the game winner. But there was actually a second left. Okay. So there was a second left, and The Celtics thought the game was over. The fans thought the game was over, and they stormed the court. And in the process of storming the court, Richie Powers actually got into a fight with a fan. I kid you not. This is the craziness. This is why I believe it was Larry Bird who said that he didn't like the Celtics fans storming the court. Okay. But the fellow Celtics fans stormed the court in 76. And Richie Powers ended up getting into a fight with a fan. So one of the Phoenix players had to pull the fan off Richie Powers. Okay. Total chaos. Total chaos. Anyway. So yeah. And the 93 NBA Finals. The triple overtime game. That game was crazy because at the end of the fourth quarter, Charles Barkley had a shot to win it. He missed it. The Bulls had a chance to win it. Scottie Pippen inbounded, threw an alley-oop pass to Horace Grant from out of bounds, which almost worked. Didn't work. Overtime. So Danny Ainge has a chance to win it in the first overtime. He misses a three-pointer. Scottie Pippen has a chance to win it in the second overtime. He misses a runner. Okay? And in the third overtime, the Suns were able to pull away 129-121. Okay? Now, people don't know. The Suns were down 2-0. So what Paul Westphal did was he actually switched up the matchups. Okay? And for those of you who may not know, Charles Barkley was playing center in Game 3. Okay? Charles Barkley was playing center in Game 3, which means he was guarding Bill Cartwright for pretty much the whole game. And Bill Cartwright, at that stage of his career, was not an offensive threat. So Barkley was playing Cartwright the whole time. So Barkley was one of the more fresher guys during the game because Bill Cartwright wasn't making him work on the defensive end. Okay. And then Kevin Johnson went damn near the whole game. 62 minutes. Kevin Johnson played 62 minutes. 25 points. And I believe 7 assists. Yeah, so. So those, the 76 game and the 93 triple overtime game, Paul Westphal was involved in both of those. Rest in peace to Paul Westphal. So, Antoine Carr, Big Dog, had a pretty nice career with the Hawks, Kings, Spurs, Jazz, Rockets, and finished his career with the Vancouver Grizzlies. Okay. So, for about the first decade of his career, Antoine Carr didn't wear goggles. Okay. So, when he came to the Utah Jazz before the 94-95 season, okay, I believe he was a free agent. Yeah, he was a free agent and signed with the Utah Jazz for the 95 season. They were playing the Clippers, okay? The Jazz were playing the Clippers. And during the game, Antoine Carr injured his eye. I can't remember if he got poked in the eye or swiped in the eye or something. But Antoine Carr had an eye injury in the game against the Clippers. Okay. And so he had an eye injury. and that eye injury left permanent damage on his eye. So the eye injury was permanent. Okay. So I often saw Antoine Carr, when people who wear goggles, they usually take their goggles off, okay, when they go to the bench or something. All right. So, but Antoine Carr kept his goggles on, okay. And if you remember, Antoine Carr had shaded goggles on, like orange shaded goggles, okay. And I always wondered why he kept them on, okay. Well, I discovered that in that game against the Clippers where he injured his eye, permanent damage to his eye. So he couldn't go outside, okay, in the sunlight or during the day without having like really, really like he couldn't go out to the sun, go to the arena without having like super ray blockers. Okay. So the eye injury he suffered was permanent, and it was really light sensitive, and it was damaged for a life. So, which explains why he always wore his shaded goggles on the bench in the locker room. So he recently did an interview, and he had on sunglasses. He had on dark sunglasses. And so I'm like, oh, now I get it now. That eye injury he had against the Clippers during the 1995 season led him to wear the shaded goggles, and his eye injury was permanent. So now he has to wear sunglasses because the light will do further damage to his eye. I get it now. Okay. So yeah. So that was a interesting piece of information right there. Also a little interesting piece about Bryon Russell as well. I didn't know this until now, but I discovered that Bryon Russell nearly got left off the playoff roster in 1995. Okay. He nearly got left off the playoff roster in 1995. And what happened was Jamie Watson got injured, okay? Utah Jazz had a guy by the name of Jamie Watson playing for them for a few years. Jamie Watson got injured, okay? Then David Benoit got injured, okay? So now they need Bryon Russell on the playoff roster, okay? But he was this close to being left off the 95 playoff roster, that close, okay? So when Jamie Watson got injured and then David Benoit got hurt, hey, may have been the best thing to happen to Bryon Russell, because he was a pretty solid player for the Jazz. I'll tell you that. He was a pretty solid player, despite the fact he couldn't guard Michael. Just had to throw that in there, Brian. Sorry about that. All right, that's it. That's all for throwing it back. I'm out of here. Peace, y'all. God bless.